So Kendrick Lamar dropped the surprise album GNX on Friday, right around 9 a.m. Pacific time. So not the normal release schedule, not something where we'd be like, oh yeah, it dropped at midnight and we'll listen to it throughout the night and into the morning. He just kind of threw it out there. It came out of nowhere. But really, it didn't seem too surprising because, based on the year that he's been having, he's been kind of everywhere. He's got a lot of traction right now, and he's going to be doing the Super Bowl. So it makes a lot of sense for him to drop something sooner rather than later. And, now is a good time. Just get it out there. Now, this album, I think a lot of people are considering it to be more of a mixtape than an album, only because Kendrick doesn't have a super consistent concept all the way through. Like with all his other projects, there's been a general concept and theme that it follows. This time around, though, it really just sounds like Kendrick's upset. He's just mad. He went to therapy and realized that he's not the problem, everyone else is. And I think that's okay. I think that's cool. It makes for good music because, he has stuff to get off his chest. He has a lot of emotions. He has a lot of things to talk about. And I mean, we're not going to get into all of that right now because, I'm still digesting the album myself. I've listened to it a handful of times, but, not enough to really get the clearest idea of every track. But before we get into just general thoughts on the album, this all feels really recent. Like everything's been recorded fairly recently because there's a lot of references to stuff that has happened this year, mostly with the Drake stuff, which I mean really isn't that much, honestly. It's just kind of stuff in the first track, Whack Out Murals. But aside from that, I think the producer for GNX, I don't remember who it is, unfortunately, but they posted on Instagram like, yo, I sent Kendrick this beat 2 days ago. Like it's already on the project, and like that's kind of crazy. Like that's the only reason I feel like a lot of this has been recorded fairly recently. Also because I think he got his GNX earlier in the year. Speaking of the GNX, it's a Grand National Experimental in 1987, and just at a glance, it doesn't really make sense why Kendrick has such a love for this car. Like he made a pretty big deal about it on his Finsta, like talking about how he purchased it. But there is a little bit of a backstory there. The Grand National is the car that he was brought home with when he was a baby. So his dad had a Grand National, not necessarily that same exact one. We don't know that for sure, but he had that Grand National. He also, or not him, but the Grand National also is the car that beat Ferrari in the quarter mile by 0.3 seconds. So you can kind of think of the Grand National as Kendrick. It symbolizes Kendrick. He's, considered the underdog. No one would consider, oh yeah, Buick's going to beat Ferrari. Like that's crazy. Like no one would think that. And, looking at Kendrick just as a person, like, oh yeah, he's just a small dude. He's not going to do anything crazy. But also because of, everything that he's put out previously, he's been a bit more reserved and more of a omniscient figure, I guess. Like he's not really going to go out there and go crazy, but this year he's popped out and he's going crazy. He's showing you guys like, hey, yeah, I can do more serious and conceptual projects, but I can also do this shit. I can put out Not Like Us and get crazy streams, get crazy revenue off of that. That song's still being played everywhere. You can't, at least in the Bay Area, you can't turn on the radio without hearing that at least 3 times in a car ride. Like it's absurd. Like Kendrick is showing everybody like, yeah, I may be unassuming, but I'm going to beat you guys. I'm going to beat all of you. And it's, not going to be by a small margin like the Grand National did. It's going to be more significant. Anyways, the rest of the project, it's a good project. I enjoy it. I, again, have only listened to it a handful of times, so I can't go too in depth into anything. But standout tracks, Whacked Out Murals. He mentions Lil Wayne, and he doesn't necessarily say anything direct. He's like, oh, Lil Wayne, like I let Lil Wayne down, essentially, kind of like how J. Cole said he let Nas down. But then he goes on to say that Nas is the only person that congratulated him for doing the Super Bowl, which some people may be like, oh, he's throwing shots at J. Cole because he didn't let Nas down. He got props from him. It's like, no, Nas is just being a good dude. And then he also mentioned how Snoop Dogg shared or talked about TaylorMade, even though it was the AI thing. And I think the intro is really just to kind of catch people up. Whacked Out Mural is literally what happened to one of his murals as well. Like somebody vandalized it, and it is what it is. As we go through it, we get Squabble Up, which is that song that everybody was looking for from the intro to the Not Like Us video. And I am glad that we got this full song. I love the sample that's on it. Like, the first time I heard just the actual sample play with the lyrics, I was like, oh, that sounds weird. But now it's just there. Luther, solid song. You got SZA, and SZA's the only person that's on here that isn't necessarily an LA artist. Everyone else that's on this project as far as features go is based in LA. And aside from SZA and Roddy Ricch, they're all lesser known artists. Like you may know them, you may know of them if you're around that area and if you listen to music from LA or Southern California in general. But the vast majority of people aren't going to necessarily know who these people are. And I don't think that necessarily takes away from the project, because some people are going to go and listen to it and be like, oh, I really just want to listen to Kendrick's verse. I don't want to hear AZ Chica. Like, I'm just picking on them specifically because that's the only person I know or knew before this. But I think that kind of adds to it more so, because Kendrick is really making this seem more like a West Coast album. He's trying to bring up the West Coast, which again is I guess, critique that he's received in the past. People are like, oh, Kendrick is doing all this for the West, but he doesn't even support West Coast artists. Well, here you fucking go. You got an album full of lesser known West Coast artists all over it. But I do understand the people who are like, I don't really care for these people and they don't really necessarily bring anything to it. But I'm sure there is more to it than just that. Reincarnated, I mean, I'm just kind of skimming through, but Reincarnated is dope. It's got that Tupac sample, and he jumps between different people, and eventually he becomes reincarnated as Kendrick Lamar as we know him, and he just keeps on going. We get Heart Part 6. He's reclaimed the Heart series from Drake, and honestly, I think a lot of people kind of forgot that Drake did the Heart 6, and I think that's for the best, because that was pretty bad, all things considered. But I mean, he goes on here and talks about how, I mean, he's essentially the reason that Black Hippie didn't happen. But, at the beginning, they were all family. Like, they all wanted to get J-Rock up. And he's telling the story about how he really was just J-Rock's hype man at the beginning of his career. And that's what I learned Kendrick as. Like, that's how I got to know him. And then very quickly, he became the person that we know now. So it's really cool to have him recount his story and just talk about how everyone was involved, and how, like, he talked about how, like, he was looking up to Ab-Soul at the beginning, and then Schoolboy Q got brought on, and Q's like, nah, like, you're really the one that's gonna get it popping. And I don't know, it just feels good, because it's like kind of a let's get back together, let's get the band back together sort of vibe, but also he understands that it might be too late for that, but who knows. And then we get the GNX track, which again, I guess the producer sent over a couple days ago, and it closed out with Gloria with SZA again. And Gloria is one of those songs that is kind of like the Common's I Used to Love Her. It is a song to, not to hip hop specifically, but to literally his pen, not his actual writing pen, but like his brains, his ability to write raps. And I think that's pretty cool. It was a cool misdirect, because a lot of people were like, oh, is he talking about Whitney at first? But like, no, he's just talking about his pen. Don't know why it's called Gloria. We'll presumably find out eventually as we dig deeper into these tracks and these lyrics. But I just wanted to hop out here, talk about the album, talk about my initial thoughts. This is not a review by any means. But let me know what you guys think of this project so far. Is it actually supposed to be an album? Is it a mixtape? What's going on? Are we going to get another project? I was kind of joking with my friends earlier that, this one's for the Crips because you got the double C's and Dodger Blue. But Who knows? Maybe we gotta play in reverse to get the one for the Bloods. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. While you're down there, like and subscribe to see more rambling and content like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.